Dan Senor was a senior advisor to Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan in the 2012 Republican presidential campaign. Good morning.
Good morning, Charlie.
We want to talk about the implications of the new policy. But what does it say about Donald Trump that he has changed on these very important issues?
First of all, there's no real worldview when it comes to Donald Trump's foreign policy. Whether it was President Bush, President Obama, you go back just about every single president since in the post-World War II era, you can ascribe a worldview to them where there was some predictability. There's not one here. What it seems this administration does is it looks at the problems before them and says, we've got to solve them, and it's not guided by any real sort of philosophy. Now, in this particular case, I think why there's sort of a bipartisan consensus in the foreign policy community. You have Republicans celebrating what the administration is doing right now. You also have Democrats who served in the Obama administration who are praising what he's doing in Syria. The reason you have this consensus is because he seems to be taking a very hard line against what is one of the most perplexing problems for our geopolitics, which is what to do about Putin and Russia. And because he's doing that, a lot of folks are saying, you know, we don't care if he is totally upending what he said before. We don't care if he's totally contradicting himself because we think he's doing the right thing.
I mean, we're talking about West Wing whiplash on so many issues. Major Garrett got to a lot of them, but on Janet Yellen, now saying he respects her, wants to keep her. On China, you know, no longer labeling them a currency manipulator. NATO saying, no, they're not obsolete anymore. Does this suggest that the moderate wing of the White House, they call him globalist Gary Cohn of Goldman Sachs, is winning out over the populist Steve Bannon?
I think that's part of the story there. I think the other part of the story is H.R. McMaster and Secretary Mattis. So take Syria. Both McMaster and Mattis know the Syria conundrum very well. They've both worked in previous military stints. Remember, Mattis was head of Central Command when the Syria problem started to heat up. They've both worked on military plans. They had plans on the shelf during the Obama administration. So their voice here is very important. From what I understand from folks working in the NSC right now, working in the administration right now, President Trump is very deferential to their expertise, particularly Mattis and McMaster. But again, look at the flip on NATO. So why the flip on NATO? NATO is a tool. Everybody knows Putin is terrified of NATO. He wants a weak NATO. So suddenly, if you view this through the lens of Trump wants to, you know, take a harder stance towards Putin, NATO becomes a tool. He wants to do something about North Korea. You know, loosening on China on the currency manipulator issue, if China will be helpful on North Korea, becomes a tool. These all become tools in his toolkit.
But do you think U.S.-Russia relations end up in a meaningfully different place than they did under President Obama?
Right now, they are heading that way. Now, whether or not they will stay that way, it remains to be seen. But you're already hearing things, for instance, hearing noise that Putin is wondering whether or not sticking by Assad is in his interest if the U.S. is going to take a hard line against Putin over that issue. Suddenly, it becomes a liability. Assad, during the entire Obama years, was not a liability for Putin. Suddenly, it is. Now, again, if Trump is anything, he's unpredictable. So who knows if he will stick with this? But right now, this is becoming a headache for Putin.
Let me ask you about other intrigue inside the White House. The Washington Post reporting this morning on Steve Bannon says that the man not long ago dubbed the shadow president is struggling to keep his job, according to 21 of Trump's aides, confidants, and allies that the Post spoke with.
Thorough reporting.
Very thorough reporting. Is there a shakeup coming?
I don't think so. I think that Bannon has probably been, weakened to some degree, but from what I'm hearing, there's so much going on right now. And we just rattled off all these issues that the administration is dealing with. The world is a mess, and they're realizing it's a mess, and they're realizing that there's a big vacuum in the world, and if they don't fill it, other bad actors will. I think the last thing the president wants right now, in the midst of all this chaos, is massive, radical personnel changes. So I don't see that happening soon.
But he cannot like the idea that Steve Bannon had been portrayed as the genius at the White House.
No, I mean, there's lots of reporting that this made him crazy. He's the star of the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Dan Senor, always good to have you here. Thank you.